Hello, what's up guys? I'm Kyle from KGR, and this was my first Figma. This is the Figma Skyward Sword Link, or back when it was released in 2014, it was just known as Figma Link. Because before this figure came out, the last Link action figure we had, I believe, was from like Ocarina of Time in late 90s. So a little over 15 years later, we got this brand new Link figure, and not only was it so impressive because of, oh, we got a new figure for the first time in over 15 years, but this was a Figma. And during this time, Japanese action figures were just starting to get popular. So releases like the Figma Link or the Nendoroid Sonic over here were so special because we were so used to buying toys at places like Toys R Us or stuff like that, and getting $10 to $20 figures, and they were okay. And then we stumbled across this, and it completely changed our lives forever. Before these, we never had figures with such premium quality in the articulation, the paint job, the sculpt work. So it's because of figures like this that pretty much set the standard of what we'd expect today out of new action figures. And I remember when I did my review in 2014, I was super impressed. But today, I want to try my best to take off my rose-tinted glasses and take another look at this, because now that this figure is over 10 years old, I don't like thinking about that. But does this figure still hold up today? If you were to get a brand new Figma Link, which one would you go for? Which one would I recommend? I'm not going to do a whole comparison, because I'm too lazy for that. I just want to focus on this guy. This guy's pretty cool. Which, speaking of, let's take a closer look at him real quick. Just take a look at this paint job, the sculpt work. Like, at this time, when this came out, this figure was magical. We could not believe that we had a figure look this good before. And it turns out that's the standard for Figma. They all look great like this, and we never knew about this. So anybody who wanted to do either a Smash Brothers collection or stop motions or anything like that, this was the go-to Link action figure because it was absolutely the best one at the time. It was the most articulated, it was the most detailed, it was just overall amazing. In fact, this figure was so amazing that it actually just got re-released in 2022, I believe. And I noticed that they changed the paint details on the face, like the eyes are angled differently, I believe. But this was a release from back in 2014, but not the absolute original release, which I'll get into why later. Now, although this figure does look beautiful, there are a few things that do show its age. For example, there's not much movement in the shoulders. There's a decent amount, because at the time it was impressive, but if this would have came out today, it would have been very disappointing because he would not have butterfly joints. He wouldn't be able to get it across his chest. Or when it comes to the wrists right here, you can see they're kind of on a hinge, but on a peg that go into the wrist. Now, thankfully, a lot of Japanese companies don't do this anymore. I think NECA still does it, but their build quality is not as delicate as these, so I guess they get a pass. But thankfully, a lot of Japanese companies like Good Smile Company or SH Figuarts, Reveltech, or pretty much every Japanese company, I believe, actually do a ball hinge that are already on the wrist, and then you swap out the hands themselves that peg into those ball hinges. While with a setup like this, which at the time it seemed safe, but then either the figure would fall and it would snap, or maybe because of the climate that you have in your room, that it may end up swelling or shrinking and gripping that peg, and when you try to swap out the peg, it ends up just snapping it. Thankfully, this is something that we don't see on Figma anymore, but when they re-released the figure in 2022, they did the exact same sculpt. They didn't try and make a Skyward Sword Link 2.0, it was literally a reprint of the figure. Flaws and all. So if you're careful with this thing, you should be okay. Mine lasted since 2014. But also, to be fair, I haven't been playing with my figures as much as I used to, as much as I miss doing, because now that I'm 32 years old, I work a full-time job, I also do YouTube part-time, and then any remaining time I have left is either chores or spending time with my fiance or making time for friends. I really miss playing with my toys. But not only with the wrist situation, when it came to early Figma, they used to also have these big, ugly joints that would hang out on the back of their knees. But because of Link's bulky design, it was able to hide these really well, and also he was able to tuck in his knees very, very well. We were very impressed with the amount of movement that we can get out of this Link. It was really impressive. But it wasn't just articulation. It wasn't just how good the figure looked. It was also the accessories that made this figure just as special. Not only did we get a baggie as well as a stand that would come with every Figma, and it was very much appreciated for a lot of toy collectors and toy displayers, I guess, I don't know. We also got what I call a hand tree, so you can swap out with so many different hands. Of course, you also gotta have his Hylian shield. You also gotta have his Master Sword and his scabbard. But then you also had a different face, and you also had windswept hair. And to top it all off, he also had a sword windswept effect, which, funny enough, that's kind of a rarity now. Like, you don't get accessories like this anymore. I know the Demon Slayer Figmas still come with something like this, but this is the only Figma Link that comes with a sword slashing effect like this. And because I got this figure in 2014, it did come with the original box that had the sky artwork and all that stuff. Obviously, you can tell it's been beaten because of how old it is, but I love these boxes so much. They have so much more charm to them. Nowadays, they're very much more modernized and pretty much have a template. It's like, okay, let me paste the figure right here, let me change the color and stuff like that, and that's mostly about it. While back then, they actually had a lot more personality and charm to these boxes, and I miss these kind of designs so much. They're so fun. Not even the 2022 re-release had a box like this. It was kind of sad. I remember when this figure came out, I was actually pretty disappointed with the fact that it was a Skyward Sword interpretation. I mean, it was the newest game at the time, kinda. I think they remade Ocarina of Time at this point, but we never got a Figma of that, and that very much disappointed me. But I was disappointed that we had the Skyward Sword Link in particular, because I wanted a left-handed Link, which technically you could still do with this because of the amount of hands they give you right here. But it still wouldn't look right with how this is set up on him. I'm happy they gave you both options to go left or right-handed, but I loved the look of Twilight Princess more because you saw him in Smash Brothers, as well as he was just dark and gritty and cool. And I also liked the Ocarina of Time one because that was just the most nostalgic for me. But at the time, beggars couldn't be choosers. This is the only Figma Link we had at the time, and we're like, you know what? He's pretty, we'll take it. And then swapping out the different pieces was fairly easy. You just take out the hair, and then you just plug in a new face, and then put in a new hair, and bing, bada, boom, he's angry, and he's more windswept. I think even at the time, it had a little bit of criticism for not coming with a whole lot of accessories compared to what we would get from, I don't know, Nendoroid or something. But thankfully, they took that criticism to heart, and then they made regular Figma as well as Figma DX. So it would come with a lot more accessories. So if you really wanted to have all that, you could pay the few extra dollars to get all that stuff. Because people were like, where are the bombs? Where are the rupees? Where are the accessories that make Link special? What makes him Link? Thankfully, with the release of the DX version of the Link Between Worlds Figma, we did get those kind of accessories. So if you want to get those, you would have to buy the DX version of that figure. But we didn't have a DX version of this Figma, it was just this Link, and that was it. Also, if you wanted a heart container, you needed to get the Wind Waker Nendoroid, I believe. I think that it came in that. Yeah, it was, you had to buy a lot later, but at the time, he didn't have a lot of accessories, and that was voiced. As well as the fact that the skirting on him, under his tunic, This is supposed to be like chainmail, and it was just painted gray. But at the time, we kind of just wrote it off because this is the best Link figure out there. Like, it's fine. But then in later releases, they did give that attention to detail to the chainmail, and even other statues that were made by Max Factory and Good Smile, the people who made this Figma, had that detail. So it was fine for now, but thankfully they did fix that with other releases. Then if you wanted to swap out different hands, you literally just slide it out, and then you just replace the different hands. Let's say you wanted to put on a shield. Now, there are two different ways to set up a shield. So, first up, we're going to put the sword on his back with the scabbard. And then you just peg that right in here, and you can set it up for either left or right-handed Link, and there you go. I guess until I do that, I'm just going to put these hands back on. Thankfully, his hat's articulated, so you can move that the way you want to. But it's only on a swivel. You can't really move it outwards all that much. But again, I think the Twilight Princess Link fixed that. I can't remember if the Link Between Worlds one did that. I don't remember. I'm pointing over there for context. I have my collection of Link figures down there. And let's say you wanted to hold his shield up on his back like he's going on an adventure or something. So what you would do is that you would take this off and then take this off. And then you would have to separate this if you want to put that into his hand. But we're not going to need to do that for putting it onto his back. We're going to peg this in, but not all the way in, just so we can slide this onto his back, because there's going to be a little notch right here in his scabbard. You got to get it past that, and then we're going to press this all the way down, so then it just hangs out, like so. And then we're going to put the peg back in, and then it should be good. I think this idea is so cool. I think this looks absolutely phenomenal. Just look at that. Isn't that great looking? Unfortunately, with the Twilight Princess one, it's not as good. It falls off fairly easy. I hate it. But let's say you wanted to put him into action and you want to have him fight something. So what we're going to do is that we're going to take this off. We're going to take his sword out, put his scabbard back on, I guess. We'll put the sword on last because that one's easy. So first we're going to take off this hand. And then we're going to put on this hand that has a giant grip on it. But it's more of a straight hand. So we're going to put that in. And then we're going to separate these. And slide these in like so. And then we're going to peg this into there. And then we're going to take these. And slide that on and peg that. Now, the top and bottom pegs are different sizes. So it's like only one way to put it on, and then after that he has his shield on. Now at this point we wish we had the ball hinge on the wrist, so you could angle the shield a little bit differently if you wanted to. Thankfully the Twilight Princess Figma did fix that, so you can set that up if you want. Now if you want to put the sword into his hand, there are two different hands that you can do it. You can either use the same hand right here that we used for his shield, or we can use one that is tilted, so you can just have it so he's actually doing a full slash or anything like that. Or doing the long upward tip thing. I don't know how to call these things. But thankfully the insides are not painted, so you don't have to worry about paint transfer when it comes to putting it onto the sword. Now, when it came to most releases, all you would have to do is take off the tip of the sword and then just slide this in. Now, with other releases of Link figures, they would just have it set up so it would actually like separate from the top of the hilt, like right here, and then pull out the whole thing. While with this, it was just a tip. And then we're gonna slide that into here. And there we go. Now, I would only recommend doing this hand if you're doing like a full slash effect, or if you want to do like, I don't know, replicate the cover of the game. But if you want to make it look like he's about to defend off somebody, we're going to take off this sword. Take off his hand. We're going to swap it out for the standard straight hand. Put that in here. Put it back on. Throw this in there. And there you go. Then you have a little bit more control to do with that. Thankfully, with the Twilight Princess Link, you don't have to do that much finagling to do that, or pretty much any other Figma Link, to be honest. I think all of them had ball-hinged wrists after this. But then after you're done, you can like put everything back onto his back. And that is honestly my biggest flaw with this figure, or most of the other Figma Links to be honest, is the fact that there is so much to do if you want to swap out different poses. At the time when this came out, this was very special, like, oh my god, you can set them up like this, you can set them up like that. But after being enthused into this for as long as I have, and messing with so many different figures over the years, I kinda like simplicity a lot more. Less is more became a lot more of a thing for me. So when the Link Between Worlds figure came out, there was no scabbard or anything like that. It was literally, do you want the shield on or off? Do you want him to hold a sword, yes or no? If you didn't want to, you didn't have to put it onto his back or anything. It was just on or off. That was it. And although this ends up looking a lot cooler once you have it all put away and put on his back, messing with it as much as I was, it got fairly annoying for me, so I kinda got over it. But that's just a me issue. That is not a valid criticism for this figure. I just got annoyed. But then we also have different hands in here. Like, we do have relaxed hands. We do have these spread open hands, like the jazz hands, for when he's actually doing a jump off the cliff to hop on his loft wing. But I think my favorite thing to do with this, if I'm like doing any action poses, is putting this on, setting this in, and then just sliding the slash effect on. It adds so much more detail to it and so much more action to it, but unfortunately it does make it a little bit heavy, so once you have it set up, don't move it. But if you would have gotten this figure when this thing first launched, getting the sword and shield back on and off was kind of a giant pain. At least the sword was. I don't remember about the shield, to be honest, because I was taking this tip off fairly easily, okay? But back then, you couldn't take this tip off. You would have to manipulate the hand and get it on, possibly do paint transfer and ruin the hand so he didn't have a tight enough grip. But unfortunately, with like some figures like Play Arts Kai, the biggest example, they wouldn't have their swords or keyblades for Kingdom Hearts come apart to be able to do that. You would have to force it on, and those are bigger figures and they were a lot harder plastic, so it was a lot more of a pain to do that. While with this, it was definitely a lot more flexible in comparison, but it was still nerve-wracking for sure. So I'm thankful later releases ended up just giving you that separating tip and just putting it back on. I'm not sure if the little grip right here in his shield was like that as well. I could imagine that it was kind of like the sword where it just didn't fall apart, but I don't know. But I love how much the abs can rock side to side like that, because surprisingly enough, we've gotten a brand new Link figure for Tears of the Kingdom, and he can't even do that. He only has forward and back ab crunch motion. So to pretty much conclude this, although this was the first Link Figma, is it worth picking up today? To be honest, if you like Skyward Sword, I don't see why not. Sure, there are better Link figures out there now. You have the Twilight Princess one, which in my opinion is kind of the ugliest. Or you have the Link Between Worlds one, that is probably the most retro looking one, which is probably one of my favorites. Or the Tears of the Kingdom, that is the most modern. I think this figure will forever be one of my favorites, strictly because of the fact that it was one of my firsts. I wouldn't call it the best Link figure now, but it would be an injustice to not call this guy a classic. A lot of toy collectors or a lot of Zelda fans would probably consider this figure nostalgic for them, because there would be a lot of kids that used to watch stop motions back in the day and a lot of times would see this Link figure. So people probably want this figure again for that reason. Or maybe they had this figure when they were younger because they had rich parents or something, and then ended up breaking it because they were younger. So I'm very happy this figure ended up getting a re-release later, but it would be hard for me to recommend this as their first Link figure. Definitely a classic, but it shows its age a little bit. But I can't help myself from not loving this thing. This thing is nostalgic for me in so many ways. But that is my re-review of the Figma Skyward Sword Link, or in my heart, the Figma Link. That's what he was when he began, and that he'll always be considered that. I love this thing. If you want to grab one of these yourself, you can either use the shop button that you saw earlier in the video, or maybe hit up one of my links in the description. It might help me out a little bit. That'd be pretty cool. But let me know in the comments, did you ever have a Link Figma before? Because if you did, What was your first Figma Link? I love this figure so much. And if I ever had to let go of a majority of my collection, I would hold on to this one specifically because of the fact that this was one of my firsts. To be honest, it would be hard to let go of a lot of my figures because I'm very sentimental to a lot of them, but this one is very special regardless. It also collected the most dust, so I'm sorry for that one. I'm thankful I cleaned it up, I don't know, whenever I did my other Figma Tears of the Kingdom review unboxing thing, because that was the last time this guy was cleaned. But anyway, thank you for watching this video. If you're new and you like what you saw, you know what to do. The description is going to have my link tree as well as maybe some places to order this guy if you can still find him, because he's been out for a couple of years now. So I don't know how many people still have him. But also let me know in the comments, how do you feel about me reviewing some of the first figures I've collected? Because I do have a few more that I do kind of want to look at again. But anyway, thank you for watching. I love you guys to death. And I'll see you on the next one. So peace, peace.